Hello, each and everyone present here. I I warmly welcome each and everyone present, and I would like to start with today's introduction. We are proud to have Laisha Vadan joined us as a guest speaker for this event. Ms. Vadan is currently working at Goldman Sachs and building all things data. She's a big-time machine learning. For past few years, she has been working in the fields of computer vision and music analysis related search, building applications at scale. While not working, she spends her time building AI and ML based applications for social good. I would like to I would like to ask Ms. Laisha to take over this session and continue. Thank you.
Hi, Kunal. Thank you for that introduction. I'll just begin with my screen share and then we can take the session forward. Kunal, can you confirm if you're able to see the screen or if anyone from the audience can?
Yes, we are able to see your questions. The screen is first visible.
All right. Okay. Again, a warm welcome to today's session, everyone. And today we'll be talking about something which is rather getting more importance in today's time with the amount of machine learning and deep learning libraries coming out these days. Transparency in AI has kind of taken a backseat because most of the ML models that you see have become a black box. And that's why we are here today talking about AI systems that, as each one of us know, has tremendous potential. But the users which use these applications sometimes have very little knowledge as to how this AI is making the decision for us. And that's why building trust in AI is not just important from the perspective of building an accurate model, but also from a business perspective, which helps us build applications for a greater audience and also, pushes the capabilities for the adoption of such technologies. So let's look at what we are going to talk about today. We'll be starting with discussion on why is it actually important, like weren't the models that we have good enough already. Then we'll also be discussing about another application that helps us build these explainable models. We'll also be looking at some machine learning and deep learning based examples. And we'll be closing the session with some final thoughts on how each one of us can, take a step forward towards building not just transparent AI, but a more ethical and responsible AI as well. So let's dive in. I'll skip the introduction since Kunal has already introduced me. So, I mean, this situation would seem very familiar to all of you, where you have built a model which works really good when you're training it and you've achieved 98% accuracy, but when you test your output on a very different data set, your classifier has just messed up and your cat is getting identified as dog, and you are just left there thinking that why is my model doing such things, or why is the output so random? So what happens is that when we move towards more complexer models, the amount of information we have on its decisioning power is really less. So we are not able to define a clear decision boundary for our models. And that's where this need to actually have an explainable AI comes in. So, let's understand explainability first from a perspective of data and algorithms, which actually build up the entire ML ecosystem. So when you're talking about data for any application, you'll first try to understand what is the kind of data, or where is this data coming from, how was it collected, and you'll also try to analyze this data, whether it needs any correction or what kind of users is contributing to this data. And when it comes to algorithms, you'll try to understand, okay, what is the kind of algorithm am I using? Am I using classification or regression? And if I'm using a kind of algorithm, what variables are contributing into it? What's the functionality? But when it comes to explaining the model's output and to, delve deeper into understanding why a certain decision was taken, a lot of users, or I would say majority of the people, do not have a lot of understanding. Because if you see any smart AI applications out there, you know that it is capable of doing this, but you do not know how is it able to do it, or how can it match your preference levels so high. So let's look at this figure. If you see, as we move towards models that are more accurate, we are actually decreasing the interpretability. Like models like decision trees and linear regression are fairly easy to interpret because we can actually visualize their outputs and how the decision was made, which variable was more important. But when it comes to deep neural networks like CNNs and RNNs and more involved, models like a hybrid of models like LSTM and CNN, the accuracy definitely increases, but the number of components that the model is dealing with makes it difficult for a human to actually interpret each and every weight. And I mean, if you look at where are we trying to go, it's not very different from where we are at currently. Because right now, the questions like why did my model do that and why did my model fail on this particular data set, and questions like can I really trust this application are unanswered. Adding an explainable model that actually helps you understand, basically answers these questions, which helps us build trust. You understand what happens, why not it happens, why it succeeded and why it not. And a lot of you would be thinking right now that why am I stressing over explainable AI so much? I am just fine with building applications and making money with my applications. But explainable AI is something which not only helps you build better applications, but it helps you drive your business because you are able to build trust in an application. And let's talk about cases where we are dealing with sensitive data, which is specifically in case of healthcare, banking, and finance. There, even if your model is 99% correct, and it fails for 1% case, you're actually dealing with someone's life, or you are dealing with actual sensitive information which could lead you to loss of a lot of money. And that's why it's important to understand what goes into when a model is taking a decision. So let's say you have a model which predicts whether the scan of a patient is like showing that person has cancer or not. And let's say that it's 99% accurate. So here, if you like AI explainability, if we know how that model has taken a decision, humans can actually build upon that. I'm not saying that explainable AI on its alone can solve every problem in the world, but it actually helps, like it acts as a team player. When explainable AI and humans work together, you know the decisioning mechanism, and you can actually build upon that understanding and take better decisions than you can take alone. And that's where this comes in really well. And if you see, when we build any application in real world and we have sourced our data, we have learned more about our data, what it does. We build a black box model. Let's say you just fed your entire data into a CNN and it just tells you all the objects that are present in your data. But sometimes you see that some animals are misclassified, and that's where you'll want to understand what's going wrong. So honestly, like naturally a question that comes to your mind is that why is it important? Why would I spend my time adding an interpretability method in my model? The reason is that if you don't, there will be a time when you'll go at higher complexities of model with higher accuracies. You might just end up getting outputs on a certain kind of data set, but when it goes to like naturally the models evolve with time, and we the data also changes consistently. So there is also a need for like the end users to basically able to trust that AI. Let's say you're driving an autonomous car, and your car just randomly stops in the middle and then in on the road, and you're just left thinking why this happened. So cases like this where we the situation is more critical, the data that we are dealing is more critical, interpretability is really important. And it's not just about interpretability, it's also about how well are we able to, how well we are able to understand what goes inside it. And it's also about the responsibility of the AI, how secure our AI is. Like if we are dealing with private personal private data in terms of, let's say, banking transactions, or we are talking about cyber threats, in those cases we also have to understand that the AI we build is secure as well as ethical, because we have a lot of compliance and governance rules in place. So today's presentation will be all about understanding this from a holistic view, and also looking at what are the ways we already have in which we can go a step closer towards it. And I mean, let's look at some of the approaches to achieving this kind of data transparency. So, explainable AI is something we have talked about a lot till now. Let's look at trust fabrics or blockchains. So, the need is to build frameworks that ensure data provenance and governance. That's something a lot of firms and a lot of individuals are working on today. Then, a really important thing is trustworthy AI. The AI systems that we build should be resilient. Like, the data that they are dealing with should be protected and secure. I'm not sure how many of you know this, but initially when the autonomous cars were launched, there were a lot of cases where the pedestrians were not identified, but they were misidentified as pieces of paper, and the car just rammed into them. And that's the kind of cases we are talking about here. That's where this need of trust and explainability comes into need, because we want to identify all those cases where this AI can kind of mess up, and that's where we want to rectify it and make it more resilient. And another thing is confidential computing, where the goal would be to design technologies that can maximize the security. We would want to limit the use of data. Like, we would not want the model to be increasingly be trained again and again on transient data. And we would want to give a control over our data, and not just model can ingest anything and everything. We want to understand what it needs, when it needs, and why it needs it. That's the three important questions that need to be answered. So everyone has this question, how to create it. Like, we know what's the problem, but we don't know the solution yet. So let's talk about Lime. Lime is basically a library that was created by these three amazing people, and that helps us actually explain any kind of model, be it a machine learning model, be it a deep learning model, or be it as simple as a linear regression model. It explains pretty much everything. What LIME stands for is local, interpretable, model agnostic explanations. So it basically means whatever model you give to this library, it will actually explain it. And another interesting thing is that it talks about local interpretable model agnostic application explanations. So what that means is that it's not trying to give you a holistic or general view of what your model does, but it is trying to explain inference by inference what your model is doing, why is it doing it, so that you know if something did not go as per your expectation, why did it not go as per your expectation. That's hence the word local. So let's understand how Lime actually does it. It's basically simple math, but very beautifully applied. So let's look at this one chart, and then we'll actually look at the mathematical interpretation of it. So previously, if we do not have any explainable module in our pipeline, what we'll do is we'll procure the training data. We'll understand the data, train it, and then we'll have a model with us. That model tells us that, okay, I'm 93% sure that this is a cat. But like, this is a simple example, but let's say cases where you are talking about transaction frauds, and system says that 93% I'm sure that this transaction is a fraudulent transaction. Naturally, anyone would want to understand that why did AI tell me? Or can I really trust this answer? If I really flag it as a fraudulent transaction, I might end up losing a customer. What explainable AI does for us is that it helps us understand the markers which contributed to saying that, okay, this is a cat. The reason being is that it has fur, it has whisker, and it has claws. These are the identifiable features due to which it took that decision, and it actually makes sense. So you have an output plus you have the reasoning, and now your user can actually trust your application, which is a very big selling point in cases of AI application these days. Also, when it comes to the governance and other things, this comes in really handy when you're trying to build something on top of data. So we'll be looking at this example just to give you a preview of what we are talking about. This is a Labrador. The reason why a classification model is calling is a Labrador is because of this particular part which is not in gray. So these were the identifiable features, and these features basically are learned from the kind of training data you'll give to your model. And now let's look at the process of what Lime model is going to do. So first step that Lime does is that it learns another model on top of your ML model. Let's say you have a classification model, which is distinguishing between cats and dogs. So it is going to learn another classification model on top of it. And how it does that is it basically creates a new data on top of your input data. Let's say you've given in a picture of a dog, it creates some like more perturbations of your data. Let's say you can define that it can be 10, it can be 20, or as many as 100. So it generates a local data around that, and then it does a prediction on this new data. So what it's trying to do is it's locally trying to explain what is happening around. And this fit is basically an approximation, and it's more simpler because it's dealing with the local data. And what happens is in when you generate this new data is that more importance is put on the or you could say more weight when you weigh these observations is put on the data that is similar to the original data. And if we talk about it mathematically, it would be wherever the distance between the two data points is less, the weight will be higher. So let's look at through a graph. If let's say the one marked in red is our observation, and we are trying to explain this prediction xi that our model did for a given model m. So what we'll do is we'll sample some points around this. So we need a local view of this data, and then we'll use the new trained model to predict the predict the output for this observation xi. Okay. Now what we does is that whatever samples we have around it, we weigh them according to their distance, which we just talked about. Then we learn a new simple model on these new samples that we have taken around it. And we then use this sample model, this sample observation to train a simple model to then further explain why we got this observation, what happened, what were the important features that went into explaining it. So what we are doing is that if you look at this particular global view, it's actually complex, and secondly it's non-linear. What we are going towards is a simple non-linear explanation so that we understand why something happened. This feature came in, yes, this feature did not come in, so it was not important. That's what we are trying to understand. And let's also explore the secret sauce. What is the mathematical equation that it deals with? So Lime basically has two important things. First is the locality aware loss. So it's trying to minimize that. So when we are dealing with a local model, we want that whatever locality aware loss is minimized so that the explainability can be higher. And this aware loss equation takes into account the unfaithfulness of the model. Like on the basis of whatever observation that we are trying to take inference for, we are trying to understand how unfaithful is. And we also measure the complexity of the model. So two things, unfaithfulness and the model complexity. So let's say model complexity, how would we decipher that? So if the model to be explained is a decision tree, the complexity of the model can be how deep the decision tree. Or in case of linear explanation, linear models like regression or Bayesian models, you can take the number of non-zero weights as your complexity. But this is something that your model, like the application actually infers on its own. We're trying to understand the the mathematics behind it. So if you see the first term here, that's the locality aware loss. So it's the measure of unfaithfulness of a model G in approximating a given sample F in a locality that is defined by pi. Now pi here is nothing but whatever samples we take around our inference, like we saw in the graph earlier. And this last term is nothing but the complexity of the model. Now, naturally, there would be some questions in everyone's mind that, okay, I have already a lot of ways to actually interpret my model. I can use EDA, I can evaluate my results, or I also have some evaluation metrics. In case of regression, I can use RMS, I can use regression graphs, I can use so many other things. But why would I invest so much time into Lime? And, I can also have some other insights into my model. But what it does not help us understand, like if we talk about the traditional approach, is that you cannot comprehend the decision boundary when your data is changing very rapidly. Also, you do not have any insight into the feature importance for the new data points. Like you can build the importance chart for your features which are already present, but as and when the data is evolving, you do not know what were the feature points that contributed into saying that, okay, I made certain classification or I predicted a certain stock price because of these factors. That's where interpretability is important. Why? Because you clearly know the decision boundary of the model. That if I'm saying that this house is going to be sold for, let's say, $5,000, this is the reason why I'm saying it, because it's located at a prime location or it has certain facilities, whatever is there in your input. Also, the reason why Lime is good is because it's model agnostic, right? And it's local fidelity, because you are trying to explain a local view of the model. You're not delving into giving a global picture to anyone, but you are able to clearly understand if something is failing, why. And for that particular inference, it's in clear observation. And with all of these local observations, you can actually approximate a global model. Let's say you are doing an inference on 10 different kinds of data over which your data over your which model is failing. You can actually build up a global picture on that model basis the inferences that you make. So let's look at some examples of how you can utilize Lime. There are three notebooks that I have attached in this presentation, and I'll pass on that link through which you can actually go and do this on your own. I will be skipping the actual method. I'll not be executing anything today considering the time we have, but I'll be showing you the examples and the snippets from whatever the notebooks have. Just give me a minute. Okay, so let's take this example where we are trying to do digit classification. Now, traditionally, when we are trying to evaluate our model visually, let's say, and see a global picture of how the model is performing, TSNE is something we would go to in order to understand how the model is performing or if there are spurious classifications that are happening. But even if you see there are spurious classifications here, where my cursor is, you won't be able to understand why. The why part is something which libraries which like Lime help us understand. So let's say there is a classification for this particular number as 2. We said that, okay, I think this is 2, but actually this is 8. The reason why our model said it was 2 is because of the part highlighted in red, which looks like a 2. And that is a very clear explanation. This tells us that, okay, I need to add more data so that my model is able to learn better. Also, if we look at positive for 3 but actually 8, you'll see that the shape kind of resembles a 3. And you know that your model has kind of gone haywired, and it has seen cases where 3 and the right side of an 8 looks alike. So this is a case where explainability in AI is actually helping you train your models better. Let me give you another example of how your explainable AI can help you drive your own, like drive business for you, not just, build better models. Let's say you're building a model to predict the churn rate in your company. And let's say it's performing exceptionally well and you're able to predict that churn. But what good is a model that is able to predict the churn, but not the reason why there's a lot of churn? Or what is the degree of churn? It should be able to, give you the pointers as to why that churn is happening or what is contributing to it. And that's the beauty of building responsible and trustworthy AI. So this is one example of the traditional versus Lime trade-off. Let's look at what all Lime can do for us. Since it's model agnostic, it should be able to explain possibly any kind of model that we give it to. So if you have text-based model, it has a class called Lime Text Explainer, which will explain any text-based models. If you have image models for classification or finding objects, possibly anything with image related, it has an image explainer. And if you have tabular data for your regression models or any other thing, it has a tabular explainer. So that pretty much covers all the three classes of data that we deal with. Let's look at digit classification in detail and how Lime does it. So this is the link for the Collab notebooks, and you can actually go here. There are 3 different notebooks. I can show you the link as well. So if you slide down here, there are 3 links for Collab notebooks. You can open these and go through it, look at it. There are multiple examples and further sources to read, and you can understand better by giving more data to it. The models that have been added here are generic ones, and they are like baseline models. You can also utilize these scripts to actually test the explainability of your own models. Let's go back to where we left. All right. So what we do is that, let's say I have built a simple data pipeline, which actually is a decision tree classifier for predicting what the number is. It's a digit classification problem. And now let's look at how an image explainer works. So first thing that we do is we define an image explainer object. This is called explainer. Now the next thing is that if you see here, we have actually segmented out the areas which actually contribute into defining why a classification was spurious. So that's why in cases of image explainers, we need to define a segmentation algorithm. Now, quick shift is something which is faster. There are a lot of other algorithms that have been mentioned in the Collab notebook. You can try a different one. Kernel size is basically what area that you need to look in. Maximum distance is also related to the number of observations you're looking at. Now, test index is the data from, or you could say a data point from your test set that you're trying to explain. Now, when you have an explainer object, you call the explain instance function, you pass in your test data, the classifier function, which is the decision classifier that we trained, and you specify that how many prediction classes that you have. In our case, it's 10, 0 to 9. And number of samples here signifies how many samples are you looking at to take in the local neighborhood. That is the new model that will be trained. It will be trained on these 10,000 10,000 data points when it's trying to explain this particular observation. And let's also look at some basic questions when we talk about decision classification. So when Lime is testing out how explainable or how well your predictions are being made, or what exactly happens inside when you're trying to explain it. So all in all, what you're doing is you're generating a new set of data for that local observation, and that is nothing but weighted samples of your original observation that are close to it. And then you are training another model on top of it on those weighted samples, and that's how that's how your model is able to explain that observation, because it's learning from its own local neighborhood. And you can definitely go and check out the notebook that will give you more insight into how this decisioning is happening. Now, let's look at something more involved. Decision tree in itself is already a very explainable machine learning model. Let's probably look at deep learning models, which are rather more difficult to explain given that the number of layers it has and the number of neurons and weights it has can be a little overwhelming if we start digging into the mathematics. So if, let's say, we are trying to train a model which is differentiating between wolves and dogs. The pictures actually look a little alike. The only thing that differentiates here is the backgrounds. And that's exactly the point of this model, is that what if we have dogs and wolves in entirely different backgrounds, which is actually true. Wolves would never be present in, domestic backgrounds or interior backgrounds. They would always be present in the wild, in snow or jungles. Dogs can be there in both the backgrounds, but generally in households or in the streets. So what we observe that is, when we are trying to differentiate between a wolf and dog, the model is only learning the background. The reason why a dog is being identified as dog is because of the tiles in the background. And the reason why a wolf is defined as a wolf is only because of the snow. And this is not what the intended behavior of our training process was. And this is where we actually have a problem. Let's say if we did not test it, we did not know and we thought that, okay, there's 98% accuracy in my model, it's ready to go, I can use it in on real data, but it would end up making very trivial mistakes when it's actually dealt with real data. So what these kind of observation help us do is to actually diversify our data enough so that we have cross reference images, let's say dogs in outdoor, wolves in indoor, and that's how we'll be able to build a model that is more resilient to all these changes. Now let's look at how image classification is done in this case. Let's say the model that we trained is an Inception v3, and we have done the predictions, we have run the inference. When we create an image explainer on top of this, we again send in the image. Image here can be any data point from your test set. The prediction function is basically what runs your output on the existing model. And here also the number of classes is 10. Number of samples we have taken is 1000. A good exercise would be to actually change these number of samples and see how the explainability becomes better. It will become better, but it will take more time to process. And another example on top of this that I'd like to give you is dogs and cats. This example is also present in the collab notebooks, that while differentiating between dogs and cats, sometimes you would see that puppies, if you compare images of puppies and cats, they can sometimes have spurious classifications. So a cat can look like a dog. The regions marked in red show that why a cat can be identified as a dog is because of this region in the face. And when you have a very clear decision boundaries from models, you can actually very easily alter the model or make it more robust to all these kind of changes. And over time, as your data is changing, you would know why my model is failing or what places it could have failed. Like now that we have seen digits, we have seen a lot of different applications of image based data. Let's look at some text classification. Now, we have Stack Overflow data, and we are trying to identify the tags for a post. We have multiple posts and we want to identify which category would it belong to. Now, naturally, when we have data, we'll have to convert it into some vectors. And let's say we have used a basic count vectorizer. Just a pretext, I have used baseline models for better understandability. You can possibly give any complex model to this library. It deals with all kinds of complexity. So once you have your regression model with you, you've trained it, now you start with your text explainer. Again, you define the text explainer. Here, you don't need to pass any kind of other things like segmentation algorithm, or you don't need to pass, like that's the only difference. Other things like the kernel width, again, you can pass. And there's another thing called feature selection. Currently, it's present as auto, but you can have your own feature selection algorithm as well. If you have some, let's say you already know that my model uses these features which are more important, the feature selection for the new model that will be built can also be specified as a function here. Then the next thing is when we are trying to explain the instance. Now here, when you try to explain the instance, you can again define the distance metric like a different. You can use you can use a squared distance as well. This distance metric is used to understand how different the sample is from each other, basis which the weight is decided for that particular sample. Here, the local neighborhood we are looking at is 5000. And all we need to do is to pass the sample that we are trying to understand, the function that predicts number of features is whatever is there, like how many categories you have. And labels is 5 and 3 is something that you know that 5 and 3 are the actual probable class that you believe are the output. And then you see what your model says about these two classes. Let's look at some of the examples. So this is how you would get it for a text explainer. Let's say you had some statement. I think this was the statement. Let's look at this one. So if you see this particular text, the reason why a model is saying that it's 96% sure that it's HTML is because of the word HTML. and words like document and element contribute to it. And it also highlights these things in your data. Also, let's say if something is being classified as SQL or Python, the keywords that contribute to identifying any question or any data related to SQL is because of these keywords. Now, explainers like these come in very handy when we are trying to build sentiment analysis models, or we are trying to build some cyber threat models on top of Twitter data or any kind of social media or any Reddit related data. That's where these kind of things help us understand the triggering words or understand any important keywords that our model is hinting towards. Or sometimes, the hackers who actually post such threats also understand these things. That's where, if we have some insight into the explainability of the model, we'll be able to alter those things, and we'll be able to build a model that is more catered towards those certain trigger keywords. That's where these applications come in really handy. If someone is interested in looking, understanding more, or wants to look at more graphical analysis, you can also explore a similar library for interpretability. It's called SHAP. It gives you more graphical analysis in terms of the observations. Also, if you want, you can also read the original, like there's a book that Christoph Molnar has written on top of this library, and also a lot of good things have been mentioned in this book called Guide for Making Black Box Models Explainable. It's a great book if you want to explore this field further. You can also check out the original paper by the creators. They've talked about this particular application of dogs versus wolves. So moving towards the end of the talk, we will try to understand whether this application or this library is actually worth it, or if not, what is the drawback and how can we actually fulfill it. So in all, we get everything that we want to build a more responsible and ethical AI. Number one being the trust. If we are able to build trust in our model, there's nothing better than that, because you actually can trust the observations that are coming out of it. Even though you see that there are some spurious observations, you know the reason behind those spurious observations. Second comes transparency. Let's say there is an AI system in place that is basically accepting or rejecting your application for a credit card. In those cases, if you really know why your application for a credit card or let's say another loan is approved, you would be able to know what is causing that. You will be able to work on it, or the bank would be able to suggest some measures. If just like that your applications are rejected, the banks might end up also losing some customers. Also, when we know that there is an AI in place that's more responsible, that we can trust, there will be more public acceptance, and we can also improve the model through feedback. Actually, let's say let's take an example of autonomous car. There's a lot of hesitation out there in people when it comes to autonomous cars, because of the kind of decision it takes is something that we don't know. We don't know why the car would be going right or left, or would randomly put a brake, or why it would be changing its speed from X to Y at a certain point. So those kind of things, when we know that why these things are happening, or that we are very sure that even in dire situations, like when there's a lot of people on the road and when there are a lot of thin transaction objects on the road, our autonomous engine would be able to perform well. That's where you would be able to build a public confidence in your product or in your application. And the really important thing is that you can make informed decisions. Let's say, again, taking the example of detecting cancer through machine learning. So, explainability in AI is actually a team player, and that's something that's very untapped potential in the current state today. Like, AI is something that we cannot rely on just yet, but we are not far from a time when we will be able to rely on it for quite a lot of things. And that's where making informed decisions is really important, because explanations, if you see, are firstly graphical, they are very short. They're very selective. You don't need to understand a lot of things. You don't need to delve into the mathematics of the things to understand the model. Let's say if you're pitching your AI product to a lot of business people, you will not go into telling them the mathematics that, okay, if a cat is being identified as a dog, it's because this weight was non-zero and this is where my model failed. No, you would want to show them a graphical explanation that if I am saying that I am rejecting a particular loan, it's because of these metrics. These metrics weigh in important, and that's why I would reject a loan. So that way, you are basically building explanations that are short, quick, and anyone can actually learn. Anyone can easily decipher, and just trust your model. You would not need to have, like, a person would not need any domain knowledge to build an understanding on your product. You can just explain it to possibly anyone. And moving towards where we need a little bit of work is that the complexity of the explanation model needs to be known beforehand. Like, if you are dealing with a decision classifier, or you are working with a regression model, you need to understand which class to use, when to use, and how to use. That's the kind of manual effort we are looking at. And let's just quickly go through what have we learned so far. So first and the most important thing is that do not trust your models without explanations, right? We have seen a lot of AI models doing a lot of different things, predicting people's age, predicting people's fortune, and whatnot. So we do not trust models without explanation. And definitely, interpreting machines' intelligence is tough. Even for a human to actually delve into each and every layer of a model, it's very tough. And the most important thing that the entire session revolves around today is that for business centric use cases, we must ensure that model is learning what we actually want to learn. In the case of dog and wolf example, the scene description well, irrespective of the accuracy. We do not want to build models with 99% accuracy or 100% accuracy. If it's something that is not able to perform on actual real world data, or in like very different situations than what the model was trained on, then that model is really not going to help us. That's what I want each one of you to take away from this session today. And coming to future of interpretability, like where we are now and where we want to see ourselves in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of the AI ecosystem, definitely focus will be on these model agnostic interpretability tools. Lime is one of them. Slowly and slowly, more and more tools are coming up in the tech ecospace. Next thing is machine learning will be automated, and it actually is, but with interpretability. We have a lot of AutoML engines which basically look at the model performance in terms of the metrics. But there will be a time when we will actually see interpretability also being a factor. Next thing that is really important is there we'll actually move towards analyzing model and not just data. We'll be testing whether A or B is better, and we can use partial dependence functions, which basically means is that we take into consideration data plus we also take into consideration the model. And definitely data scientists have already started automating themselves, but interpretability is something that will boost the machine learning research, and it will actually help us build more intelligent models than what we are building currently today. And this is the paper called Why Should I Trust You, that is written by the original, like the authors of the library. You can go and have a read. It's a great read, and anyone who is intrigued by this topic should definitely look at it. You can also check out the library. You can look at how this particular library works. It's open sourced. You can also check out the blog by the authors. They talk about this dog wolf example in greater detail. And that's all from my end. I am open for any questions from the audience. I see something in the chat box. Okay.
Hi, Laisha. There is a question from Rishabh.
Yep.
The question says, how can we tackle bias in data and can Lime help us in that?
Bias in data. Okay, that's a good question. So let's say I'll take an example of digit classification, and let's say you are just trying to classify 0 to 5. Okay, and you have a lot of samples for a particular number, and you overlooked that when you trained the data. You just got the data from somewhere and you just trained it, and you did not realize your data had bias. And then when you start testing your data on a different data set, you see that a lot of numbers are getting misclassified, and 5 and 3 are something which are getting misclassified more. That's when you'll realize that okay, there is some kind of bias that is coming in my data. Now how you'll realize is this, because when you look at numbers, let's say 3, a certain part of 3 can look like 5. When you use Lime to explain those observations, you'll be able to evaluate that. And bias in data is something which Lime will definitely help you understand, apart from your initial data checks that you can do in order to understand data distribution and how your data looks like. Ideally, while training a model, you would first want to remove any kind of bias in your data. But let's say you have real world data and you want to test how my model works. Lime can actually help you when you take inference on a set of observation. If the bias is coming towards a certain number, if the misinterpretations are happening towards a certain number, you'll know that I need to add more observations of this kind, or you need to actually um, basically perturb your data with more applications, or some kind of annotation is required in the existing data. That's, I hope that answer your question. I think we have one more question. Okay, you want to understand if there is any advantage that the Linux system gives over other OS when it comes to machine learning model developments. Yeah, I would say thanks, Shresht, for that question. So, if when it comes to actually building machine learning models, the amount of packages and dependencies that you need to use can get a little overwhelming. So, Ubuntu, it's fairly easy to do all of those because operation of terminal and shell is really handy. But when it comes to Windows, also you'll have to actually set up a lot of virtual environments using Anaconda or some other software packaging to actually set all these things up. But Ubuntu kind of helps you in doing that because it's more developer friendly than compared to other OS. You can even use any Ubuntu based other OSs as well, like Kali Linux or other things. Any other questions, please feel free to ask. I mean, there's a lot of open potential in this field to actually, explore. There's also another open source library called AIX360. They also are working on building a more explainable interface for the models. And there are teams globally which are actually trying to have interpretability as a module in terms of their auto ML engines as well. And that's something that will be revolutionary in terms of AI, the next thing that is there for AI.
Hi, Laisha. There are many students here who are willing to get understanding and getting to know about AI currently, and they need to work on it as their student base. So, can you just give them some information? How can they grow up in this, their skills in this, and how can they actually come up with a valuable data sets or maybe a model that can really help them to get up with a project or something at their final year?
Yeah, sure. So, see, when it comes to AI, there's a lot to learn, and sometimes it can be daunting to understand where to start from. So, when it comes to AI and ML based applications, the first, like if someone is just starting out or someone wants to venture into this field, the most important thing will be to get your basics right, which is the mathematical part of the models, of how a model works, what a model does, and why it does that. That's three important questions that any machine learning enthusiast would want to understand. Then second thing would be that start working with the plethora of data, like work with images, work with some tabular data, also try your hands with some kind of sound data, like explore your hands at different things, and start with the basic, start at classification and regression models, which you can easily understand and you can also mathematically solve if you were given the chance to. And then when you see that, okay, I am solving a digit classification problem through a linear model, so I am facing like these are the drawbacks in this model. Then you go on to use a decision tree classifier. You see that, okay, these limitations are covered, but there are even more limitations that you unfold. Then you go towards higher model like CNN, or hybrid models of CNN plus other classifiers, and you realize that, okay, I'm able to get a lot of good observations, but now I think that I need to alter my data more. So learning AI or using AI is a step by step process, which you only get to learn by doing, and by going from a simpler application to a more complexer one. Because in this process, you'll actually learn what works, what does not work, and if something does not work, you have line to actually understand why something does not work. And talking in terms of different applications of AI, what you can use or what you can try your hands at, I see that there's a lot of potential in voice related data, natural language processing in terms of text. So there's you can actually work with building voice engines, some like AI assistants which can actually understand your commands and like strike a natural conversation with you. There are already trained models which you can actually fine tune using your own data. And one more important thing that I'd like to highlight here is that a lot of the things in your model is governed by what kind of data do you give to that model. Just using off the shelf data is not the key to building good AI models. The more important thing is understanding that data, distribution of that data, the quality of the data, and also the source of that data. Sometimes the source of the data can also create bias in your data. So correcting your data, preparing it for the kind of application you're building is really important. And that's something I would suggest, like if people in their final year are working on projects for machine learning and other things, like a good project would be where you actually source the data yourself, or if you already have that particular data, use it for an unconventional application. Let's say you are trying to build conversational AI, build it in your own native language. Build a small data set in your own native language and train that AI model to actually have conversations with you over specific topics which you see that other conversational AI agents do not have. You can like use the already existing voice models that are already present, that have been open sourced, fine tune them to your own language, and then build something that's more novel, build something that you feel that if that was there, my life would have been easier. Or you could build something. Let's say we've been through the COVID times, and technology has played a really important part. You can look into building tools that can give you any COVID related information in seconds, or it can analyze any distress calls through messages, or can fetch information, can check the sanity of the information using AI and other things. That these would be some of the ideas I'd like to suggest. I
Thank
see
you, Laisha.
another, yeah, I
Yeah,
see another question by Jal Ganesh, Jay Ganesh, I think. Yeah. So, question is, does Lime improve the accuracy of the model? Definitely, but it's not guaranteed, because when a line is trying to explain you something, it's telling you that your model is going wrong because of XYZ reason. Now it's up to you to take an action on that data and improve your model. So that's like, let's say in digit classification, we saw that an 8 is looking like a 3 and a 7 and a 5. That means that we need to add more annotated data. We need to probably twist or turn the images, have more contrast in the images so that these kind of samples can be picked. So it's all governed by your data. So Lime is not going to do any magic by boosting the accuracy. And at the end of the day, it's not about the accuracy. It's about how uh, correct the observation is and whether that observation is valid in case of other situations as well. Like if your model is trained from a data from domain XYZ, is it able to perform in domain A? That's where that's the kind of AI models we are looking at in today's age. So Lime is basically going to guide you to improve the accuracy of your model, but it's not an auto ML engine that can improve the accuracy by suggesting the best model to you. I hope that answer your question.
Laisha, there is
Okay.
another question.
Yeah. According to me, what would be the minimum systems requirement if somebody is searching for a new computer and wish to work for some ML projects? So I have two answers for this question. If you are planning to use your own system to run your ML models, like on-prem on your own system, then you would need at least in terms of processor, I would say take anything i5 till i7, anything should be fine. Like I have an i7, I'm able to run ML models pretty well in my system. But when it comes to higher deep learning models and you want to, if you are into deep learning, you would need to go for higher RAM in terms of 16 GB and above. That's when you'll be able to run more involved models. But you can also utilize a lot of cloud based engines. So Google Colab is one such engine which gives you free hosting space to actually run any kind of models that you want. And there are also a lot of other there's one by IBM. You can also use them to run your applications, or you can actually buy an instance for a year and run your applications over there if you do not want to invest in a laptop with such high configurations. Any gaming laptop with high RAM and anything above i7 or above is a good laptop for all your ML models. And if you want to run just machine learning models, they would run even in an i5 laptop with 8 GB RAM. If you're trying to do deep learning, you would need something above i7 and above with a 16 GB RAM. Otherwise, you might end up burning your laptop.
Any other questions?
I think that's all then.
Yes. So I'm grateful to Miss Laisha for giving her valuable time and providing such informative session. A little bit more about Bitrit. Bitrit is an online data science platform that includes AI competitions, a job board for data scientists and analysts. And our end goal is a fully functional AI marketplace where companies and engineers can exchange algorithms and payments freely on a blockchain platform. We are excited to announce that we have just launched our two-phase competition, the Litecoin NLP Challenge. This is a part of an NASA tournament lab with a prize pool of $1 lakh. It's completely free of cost. Do check it out. And I am providing you a link in the chat box. Feel free to reach out to there and check out the competition.
If anyone has any other questions, you can reach out to me over LinkedIn or Twitter and I'll be able to help you. So thank you, Kunal, for having me today. And thank you, everyone, for being a patient audience.
Thank you everyone for joining in. Bye. Have a great day. Thank you, Laisha.